When I grew up, my mom made me live by a very simple rule. If it's sunny, you go outside. If it rains, you get screen time. Of course, this was back in the early 2000s, and screen time basically meant watch a movie on the living room TV. Then, as I got older, the internet had evolved to something close to what it is today. Social media exploded, and I got more interested in both online and offline gaming. Screen time started to feel more like a human right to me than what it had once been, a luxury. Fast forward a couple of years, and I, along with so many others, are struggling with how to limit our own screen time. We want to make more time for our hobbies and relationships, and overall just live more fulfilling lives. But what if the answer had been there all along? If it's sunny, go outside. If it rains, you get screen time. So I conducted an experiment all based around that one rule. 1 week of letting the weather control my screen time. And it was probably one of the greatest things I've ever done. So let's see how it went, shall we? Good morning, guys. It's the first day of the challenge, and as you can probably tell, it's super sunny outside, so that means no screen time for me, or at least not if the weather's gonna continue this way. So I've been thinking about what I'm gonna do for the rest of the day. I mean, obviously I'm gonna start working. I'm actually gonna head to a client meeting in just a few moments, and after that I'm gonna head back home to work from home a little bit. And then in the evening, me and my boyfriend actually have laundry time scheduled, so that's gonna be interesting to kind of find something to do in between those hours when the laundry machine is running, because usually that's when I like to sit down and watch a YouTube video or play some games on my computer. But like I said, it's sunny outside, so I'm not allowed to do any of that. But what I was thinking is that I might head down to the library sometime during the day and pick up a book, and then maybe I can find some nice place to sit down and read outside while waiting for the laundry to finish. So yeah, I think that's going to be my action plan for the day. So yeah, with that being said, I'm going to head off to work, and I'll see you again in a little bit. Alright guys, I'm back home and I've had lunch. I went by the library and I've also had my last meeting for the day. So all that remains now is to do some focus work, and then I have my first evening of not being able to use any screens. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I did not check out the weather beforehand, so I have no idea what the weather is going to be like this week. And you might have seen on the clip that I shot on my way back home from the library that it looked like it was going to rain for a little bit. And I was like, okay, cool, then maybe I can do my usual gaming sesh while I'm doing the laundry. But now it's all sunny and bright and blue skies again. So yeah, I guess I'm going to stick to my original plan of finding a cozy spot outside and reading the book I just borrowed. But yeah, we'll wait and see, since there's still a couple more hours left until then. And honestly, I don't know what I'm hoping for, because I've been away for a wedding for the entire weekend, so my social battery is kind of low, to be honest. It would be nice to just sit in front of the computer and go into my cozy little gaming world. But the weather seems to have other plans for me. But yeah, it's kind of exciting to not know what my plans for the evening are going to be. So I'm just as excited to find out as you are. And I'll see you again when I've finished my work. Good morning, guys. It's now day 3 of the challenge, and I thought that I would talk a little bit about yesterday because that was by far the hardest day of the challenge so far, and it's only been 2 days. So during the workday, it was kind of chill because I worked from home, and as you saw, I had lunch on the balcony instead of watching my usual YouTube video, and that was all fine and well. But then the evening came around, and since we didn't do the laundry on Monday, we had to do it yesterday instead, which was also fine. But I quickly noticed that I didn't really know what to do while waiting for the laundry to finish. The things that I did manage to do were reading the book that I borrowed from the library the other day. I also wrote in my diary, and I spoke on the phone with my parents for a little bit. And then after that, I didn't know what else to do, and the weather was still sunny, so I was kind of at a loss and starting to feel a little bit restless. And I know now, looking back, obviously there were things that I could have done, but at that time I was kind of starting to hope for it to rain because I really, really just wanted to sit down in front of my computer or YouTube and just chill. And eventually it did start raining, so I ran to my computer. I'm not even lying when I'm saying that I dashed to sit down in front of my screen and my keyboard and booted up The Sims as fast as I think I've ever done. And it was nice and kind of cozy, but at that time I was already close to finishing the laundry and it had started getting kind of late. So I didn't really feel like I got the whole experience out of it, if that makes sense. If anything, I think it actually worsened my sleep because I woke up this morning feeling like really groggy and I dreamt a lot and yeah, I just didn't feel well rested at all. And I think it's because I gave in to that temptation and ended my evening last night with being exposed to a computer screen. So yeah, that was kind of an interesting experience, and I think it really says a lot about how used I am to having screen-related activities as my only kind of wind-down activities, where I could be doing other things as well that my body and my brain would feel are more relaxing. But yeah, that's not what my nervous system is used to. So we're going to continue on with this week and see if I kind of start feeling different about those activities or if I'm still going to get like restless and wanting more screen time. I don't know if you can tell by the lighting, but right now it is sunny outside and a little bit cloudy. So yeah, no rain, which means no screen time for me. And we actually have plans after work today. We're going to visit a friend of ours. So I don't think this is going to be a day where I have a lot of screen time during my free time overall. And that feels kind of nice actually, because it was really tough last night, just kind of waiting and hoping for it to rain, just so I could get that little bit of screen time that I wanted. Whereas today, I know that we have plans that aren't dependent on the weather, so that actually makes me feel a lot calmer. So yeah, I'm gonna check in with you guys later, and we'll see how I'm doing by then. Alright, so I'm way too tired to prop up the camera, so I'm just gonna film this part on my phone. But now we're back. We met up with our friend at her new apartment, and it was a really nice place. We had a really good time. And it actually started to rain while we were there, and I couldn't help but feel like damn, why couldn't it have rained while I was at home? Which kind of makes me feel like a horrible person, but it also really sheds a light on the fact that I'm way too obsessed with my screen time, or rather way too dependent on my screen time. I feel like these 3 days that I've been doing the challenge so far have already taught me a lot about my relation to screens and what I'm using my screen related activity for. So yeah, with that being said, I'm gonna start to wind down for the evening, and wind down right now basically just means hello. And wind down right now basically only means taking off my makeup and going straight to bed. So that's what I'll be doing now, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Good morning, guys. We're back at the gym again for the second workout this week, and I'm feeling good. As you probably saw, I actually got a little bit of screen time last night, even though it didn't rain. But that was because the Football World Cup has just started, and for those of you who might not know, I'm a huge football fan. I played when I was younger, and I've also been an active supporter, going to a lot of games for the last couple of years. So yeah, for me, the World Cup should definitely be an exception to this rule, because it only comes around once every 4 years. So I allowed myself to watch the premiere game, and it was a lot of fun. And then I went straight to sleep afterwards, and then I woke up feeling super well rested, so it's time to do a little workout here at the gym. As for the rest of the day, we're actually going to go to my parents' place in the afternoon, because we are hosting a joint birthday party for me and my dad. So a bunch of relatives are going to come over on Saturday, and me and my boyfriend are going to go there today to help with the setup and planning and stuff. So yeah, I'm not expecting any screen time from the rest of the day, especially not because, once again, it's sunny outside, which is starting to sound like a complaint from my side, but it really isn't. Like, here in Sweden, we're happy for all of the sunlight that we get, basically. It's just interesting that the particular week of this experiment has had so much sunlight and good weather. I really wasn't expecting that. But yeah, that's gonna be the rest of the day. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to film anything more today, but if not, then I'll see you probably after the party. I'll try to film a little bit during the party, but if not, then I'll see you guys on Sunday for the end of this challenge. So we are actually at the end of the challenge now, and it's been an experience to say the least, but not in the way that I expected. So I did actually manage to get some screen time in yesterday because, what do you know, it did rain after like a week of constant sunshine. It did rain. And I never thought that I would be so excited about a rainy day, but here we are. So that's what these experiments do to you, apparently. So what are the positive effects that I actually noticed by doing this challenge? Well, I want to start by saying that this experiment was by no means easy. If you've been following along with the video, you know that I wasn't at all relaxed after the first day of using basically no screens aside from during my workday. So these positive effects that I'm mentioning right now, it did take a while for me to notice them. But one that I did notice and that kind of stayed with me throughout the experiment was that I became a lot more curious about my own thoughts, if that makes sense. I think for a lot of us, we're using screens as kind of means to not dull our own thoughts, but, kind of distract ourselves from thoughts that make us feel bad or thoughts that we even don't want to notice at all. And that has apparently been the case for me as well, even though I think of myself as someone who's very conscious about my thoughts and my mindset and what kind of mood I want to be in for the day. I noticed quite quickly that the thoughts that came to me when I wasn't distracting myself with screens were work-related thoughts a lot of the time. And as someone who struggled with burnout for the last couple of years, I want to look at myself as kind of evolved. But the fact of the matter is, I'm also a person who really puts a lot of pride and effort into my achievements, which can cause a lot of anxiety a lot of the time. And I think a lot of it comes down to that I'm actually not as elevated as I think I am. I am more detached, sure, than I was during my burnout. But apparently I'm still a person who has a hard time detaching herself from her achievements, and especially her work-related achievements. So that kind of stung a little bit. That's not a part of my identity that I particularly like very much. But at the very least, I feel like this week has given me room to accept that this is actually part of my identity, whether I like it or not. And now it's up to me to kind of tweak that part of my identity so that it isn't harmful to me, but rather serves me. As for other positive effects, you know how you watch people online who take time off from their cell phones and computers or social media in general, and they always seem to say something along the lines of,
I noticed that food tastes better and I'm more present with my surroundings and the people around me, and I feel much more liberated and happier and lighter.
Most of the time when I'm watching those people, I feel like that's such a cliche. But you know what the worst part is? It's actually true. I had this example, and this was actually during the first day of the experiment, where I was waiting for the bus while going to work. And there was a group of, I think, high school students, or rather like a class of high school students who were probably going on a field trip or something. And during most days, I would kind of get annoyed if this were to happen on a Monday morning. Like, I'm tired, I'm off to work, I just want to have a calm bus ride and not be in the middle of loud, obnoxious teenagers. But while I was sitting there with like nothing else to do because I couldn't use my phone, I started to observe them and what they were doing. And then I noticed that they were actually doing this really old school thing where they were trying to get truck drivers who passed them to honk. They were doing like this symbol. I think that's how you do it. And they actually managed to get several truck drivers, bus drivers, and car drivers who passed them to honk. And they were super happy every time they managed to get someone to do it. And the drivers looked really happy as well. And this is such a small everyday life thing, but just observing that and being aware that I probably wouldn't have noticed that if I was distracting myself by listening to music or whatever, made me feel a little bit happier. I was so happy that I got to be present and notice that little exchange of happy vibes. And then a lot of the other cliches turned out to be true as well. Like, my food did actually taste better, and I was more present in my conversations, or at least I feel like I was. You probably have to ask my boyfriend if that was actually the case. So yeah, unfortunately, the cliches are true. But what can I say? I guess that's a good thing if you'd ever want to try an experiment like this yourself, because then you'll probably get to experience it too. Another fun thing with letting the weather control my screen time was the little element of surprise that I got every weeknight. Because like I said, I didn't check the weather any of the days. So the only thing I could do to know what I was allowed to do was to look outside the window and see if it was raining or if it was sunny. And that element of surprise made it feel like every weeknight was a Friday. This is probably only a thing for people who work 9 to 5s Monday through Friday. But anyway, I think it's because, at least for me, most of the weeknights have some kind of planned event, or like there's a plan. Even if there's not an activity, then you have planned to have a relaxing night off. Or if there are plans, then there's a planned event. Where you're gonna go, who you're gonna hang out with, and you know what you're gonna do. So there's never that element of surprise during weeknights. Whereas on a Friday, even if you have a planned event or plans of any kind, you know that you don't have anything you need to do the day after, so that still leaves kind of room for the unexpected. And I think that's the feeling that I got during the weekdays when I didn't know what my plans were going to be, because I didn't know what the weather was going to be like. So that was kind of an added bonus as well, the feeling of getting multiple Fridays in a row. And lastly, for those of you who follow me for my fashion content, you're probably a little bit bewildered by this video as a whole, because it's inherently not a fashion themed video. But I will say that there was actually a fashion themed positive outcome of this experiment as well. And it's kind of tied to the things I talked about before with being like more present with your surroundings. And that is that I noticed a lot of people's outfits in ways that I don't tend to usually do. Obviously, as a fashion girly, certified, I tend to look at people's outfits probably more than the average person does. I feel that's one of the fun things about putting together outfits, is that it's like you're speaking a secret language that only other people who are also speaking the same language can understand, and then you're kind of trying to communicate with those people. But anyway, I digress. The thing is that I felt like I noticed people's outfits even more than I did on a usual day, where I would maybe look at someone's outfit and be like, oh, that's cute, and then I would look down at my phone and continue scrolling. Now I felt like I had a lot more time and energy to actually look at people's outfits, if that makes sense. Or rather, I had time to look at them, but then also had time to sit down and appreciate them. I have this particular memory of a girl that I saw on the tram on my way to work. And she had this white flowy skirt and then a super cute sporty pink t-shirt. And that outfit just resonated with me, both because I felt like I could recreate that outfit, but also because it was kind of a pop of unexpected fashion choices in the middle of people who were in their corporate office wear. And I could appreciate that more than I probably would have done on a normal weekday. And I think there's a lot of content here on YouTube that talk about where to get fashion inspiration from. And obviously there are so many different sources. But I feel like one of the greatest and most overlooked sources is actually real life. Because that's when you see outfits that are also actually wearable. When you're looking at an outfit on the internet, it might look like it's a practical outfit that's wearable. But you can never really know because it's a photo or a video. You don't know how staged it is. But if you see someone in an outfit in real life and you see them running their errands or whatever they're doing, then you know that, okay, that outfit would actually work for that purpose. So it's a way to get a lot more realistic outfit inspiration, I feel like. All right, so those were all of the positives, but what about the negatives of the experiment? Actually, I don't think I even want to call it negatives, because the only negative thing that happened during this experiment was my experience of not being to use any screens, which I don't feel like is a negative outcome of the experiment. It's more of a consequence, if that makes sense. I don't know, maybe this is way too convoluted and complicated and I'm not making any sense. But anyway, my main point is I don't want to frame the next talking points as negatives of the experiments. I want to frame them kind of as... What do I want to frame them as? I want to frame them as thought provokers, maybe? I want to frame them as something that gives me something to think about and evolve towards. So yeah, I think thought provokers is probably a better term for what we're gonna discuss next. And the first one of those is that I became aware how much gaming has impacted my life and for how long it's impacted my life. I've always been a gamer, and I know that I've always been a gamer, but I haven't really reflected on the effects of always being a gamer and how it's impacted my life, and especially my off time and recovery. So to give you guys a little bit of context, I was born in 1996. So I still had a childhood where I wasn't handed an iPad from the moment I was born. I mean, that's the whole premise for the video, that we had this rule when I grew up that you could only use screens when it was raining. So I did use a lot of screens, but it wasn't from like the first day of my life. It was something that I gradually grew into. And like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, screen time back then was a lot different than it is right now. Screen time back then was basically me playing on my Game Boy Advance, or a bit later me playing Sims on my computer. It wasn't like endless scrolling. And I feel like I'm not an endless scroller type of person anymore. That wasn't the basis of me trying this experiment either. It was actually taking a step back from the screens that I feel add value to my life and seeing exactly how much value they are adding. And I think the answer after this week is that they are actually adding a lot of value, way more than I thought before going into this experiment. I like to consider myself an extroverted introvert. So I love being around people, I love talking to people, and I tend to go a little bit nuts if I go a few days without not talking to anyone or like meeting up with anyone. But at the same time, my own time is super important to me. If I have social events planned every day of the week after work, I feel so drained. And bear in mind, I also have a really social type of work. I work as a recruiter, so meeting people every day, meeting new people every day is part of the job description. So over the years, I've come to realize that during my downtime, I really need to have those hours where I can just sit by myself and not engage with anyone, just being with myself without any expectations from anyone else. And I think I've now come to realize that gaming has been that safe space for me during all of these years. And I want to add to that I'm also a person who has a lot of hobbies, evidently. I like to make videos, I like to engage in fashion, I like to write and draw and sing on occasion. I like to work out, I like to go to football games. There are so many things that I love to do and experience. But what I've noticed during this week is that none of the other activities give me that same feeling of safeness and relaxation that gaming does. And that's something that I've really missed during this week. But yeah, to summarize all of this, gaming is a much larger part of my life than I initially thought, apparently. And feel like I might want to do a video about gaming as a restorative hobby, especially for girls, because I feel like even though in this day and age girls who play video games aren't like a revolutionary thing anymore, like we're all aware that girls are gamers, that's not a big deal, but I feel like there is something to be said about the types of games that make you feel relaxed and make you feel safe, and why they do so. I feel like that could be an interesting topic to talk about. So let me know if you want to see a video on that in the future. And lastly, I want to say that on occasion, or rather on multiple occasions during this week, it kind of felt weird to not be able to control my evenings. I know I made a case for the element of surprise and how that was a very positive outcome of the experiment. And while that is true, I also feel like it was challenging to know that those few hours of free time that I had after my workday was over were out of my control. It can sometimes feel like those hours are the only freedom that you get. And that sounds dramatic, and I know it isn't true, but again, I'm just saying that that is what it can feel like sometimes. And that is what it did feel like, especially during this week when I had no control over those hours. So with that being said, I really would like to try this experiment again sometime, maybe during one of my vacation weeks when I don't have to spend the majority of the day at work, because then I would be able to see if I still felt the same lack of control even when I have more time that's not in my control. And also it would be fun to see what types of activities I would fill the day with when there's more time that needs to be spent while not using any screens. So to finish off this video, would I recommend that you do this experiment? Absolutely. Once again, I won't be subtle about the fact that this was a hard experiment. It genuinely felt challenging a lot of times during the week. But I think that's what made it such a great experience, because I feel like I've actually learned a lot. And like I said, I feel like I would want to try this experiment again, but during different circumstances, to kind of see what effect that would have on me and my well-being. There are so many ways to reduce your screen time if that's something that you want to do. And what works for me might not be the thing that works best for you. But I would say that this experiment probably works best for people who need clear boundaries in their lives. We can sit here and talk about how to be disciplined all day, but sometimes you just need a clear boundary set by external factors that are out of your control, and you have to find ways to adapt. Because I feel like that's what this rule was ultimately about when my mom set it for us as children. It was never just about reducing screen time. It was about making sure that we would be able to adapt to situations outside of our control, that we would be able to respect boundaries that were set by factors out of our control, and make the best out of situations that weren't always ideal, but still were a part of life. And if there's something that I want to take pride in about myself, it would definitely be my adaptability. And maybe that rule is where it all started. So that's all I have for you today, but thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. And if you do a similar experiment, I would so love to hear your thoughts and your experience, because like I said, I learned a lot. So if you tried it, leave a comment down below and let me know how it went. And also, if you want me to do more experiments like this in the future, leave a comment below and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos.